Please welcome Matthew Holloway.
Cool. Where's the gizmo? So today, what I want to talk to you about is no feedback. What I'd like to talk to you about today is a team that Hasso actually set up that is called the Design Services Team. And the Design Services Team is in the office of the CEO. It was created a couple years ago, 2 years ago. It's got a vision and a purpose that's to bring design thinking to SAP. And what this really means is all of the stuff Hasso was talking about in terms of the team that went out and videotaped the customers and the way that they use document management and bringing that information back. We want every developer in the company to have that skill. We don't want it to be an exclusive thing just for designers to be able to do that. We want developers, solution managers, product managers. We want support people. We want everyone in the company to be able to have that skill. So the vision for the DST came out of a Sapphire talk that Hasso gave, where he took a copy of the IDEO cover article that was on Business Week. And so he talked about how important design was. Oddly enough, the next day, David Kelly called him, and he called David, because they were both trying to find each other. And soon after that, IDEO and SAP began a collaboration on how to actually apply design thinking to software. And out of that came the Design Services Team. We're kind of the in-house IDEO, as it were. Not that I would say our team is as well-known or well-branded or well-staffed, but we try what we can do in terms of those methods. The purpose of the team is to work across the organization, so we're in the office of the CEO, so we can work with all of the business units across all of SAP. Now, the value of this is that each of the different divisions of SAP has a design team of some type, but they're not necessarily able to really kind of push those development teams or those marketing teams to go out and talk to the customers and really kind of understand their needs and their purposes. And our purpose is to be able to facilitate those conversations. We really want to change the way SAP builds things. So the approach that we're taking is actually to do three things. We work on products and processes. So we actually work on the system Hasso was just describing. We've worked on that product for the last year and a half, and we've helped them evolve not only the way that they approach designing that product, but also the solution itself. We also work on processes. We recently were asked by the head of HR at SAP to redesign our performance management system, the internal deployment of it. And what we actually found was that it wasn't the tool that needed to be designed. First, the policies needed to be designed and the process that we use. So we worked with the global HR organization to redesign the internal policies and processes that we use to do performance assessment, compensation planning, talent management, et cetera. Then we're going to start working on the tool itself. We're also providing thought leadership. So we allow the company to have access to thought leaders like Patrick and others to be able to have real firsthand access to the people who are really leading the way in terms of applying design thinking to not only software development, product development, any kind of application of that process. The impact that we've had in the last couple of years is we've worked on close to 30 different projects. We've had over 30 major workshops where we actually teach. It's a day-and-a-half-long workshop where we kind of run people through at a fast pace to get them excited about it, and then we do follow-up engagements with them. We've done over 30 of those workshops. We've done close to, actually, as of today, we've done 29 projects because we just did a close yesterday on a project. So we also work with a lot of the emerging markets and the emerging technologies that SAP engages with as well. We really try to demonstrate impact, and through that demonstration, articulate why this is so important. Previously, different companies, SAP included, have always tried to say design is a very important thing. And everybody says, yeah, but what does it really mean? Like, of course it's nice, but... So what we try to do is go in and actually show them firsthand by engaging with them what design does and why it's important. So the approach that we take is basically 4 major services. So what we try to do is the basic idea is the design-led innovation workshop. So this is the day-and-a-half workshop where we kind of show them the methods and the approaches that we take. We give them the basic fundamental exposure to the idea. Now, this also happens to be the world's best business development tool, like, from a design perspective. we get most of our projects by people going through this workshop and then coming back to us. Now, what's nice is the workshop sells out in about 15 minutes. So we've taught this in every major lab location, China, India, throughout Europe, throughout North America, all of the different sites that SAP has labs. When we set this thing up, usually it sells out literally in 15 minutes. The internal training people want us to do more of them. We're trying to ramp up to do more of them. We just don't have the bandwidth. Now, the other thing that we do is in the upper right-hand corner, which is projects. And the projects usually take us about 3 to 6 months, and that's a full-blown project engagement. We're kind of the in-house design consultancy that works with them. But recently, what we're more excited about is the other two areas where we do kind of a deep dive approach, where we work on a project with a lot of people for a short amount of time to really push some ideas and really kind of blow the doors out of some of their thinkings to give them a real nice understanding of a new, say, emerging technology or a new market opportunity so that they can walk away well-informed and on the right track. Then the other piece that we're doing, which we're also very excited about, is coaching. So this is a process where we take 1 or 2 of our people and embed them in a team for their entire life cycle of their project, which could be 6, 8 months. And those people help mentor and coach them on the processes that designers use. So everything from project planning, user research, data analysis, synthesis, et cetera, all the way up through the shipping of the product to make sure that they're really using these methods appropriately. A couple of these efforts have resulted in some new project initiatives being well received within the company. They really pushed forward. So that's the basic kind of approach. The two at the top, we really we want to do to teach. So we really want people to come into a project, and I'll talk more about this, but the idea is they work with us 50-50, so half of our people, half of their people on a project. So we'll never take a project and kind of run back to our space, work on it, and give it back to them. We always have to do it collaboratively with them, so they actually get to learn how we do it by working with us. And on the bottom, we basically are doing this more to teach them how to do this, and we're more hands-off in terms of actually doing it with them. But in the course of the 2 years, we've found 5, probably there's more, but 5 major challenges in making this succeed. And I want to talk to you a little bit more about those today and how we're overcoming some of those challenges. So the first big challenge is language. So you can see from Hasso's presentation, some of you guys are probably saying, how does what Hasso talks about have anything to do with design? Because some of you are thinking capital D design. So it's the aesthetics or the form or the color of something. And what we're really thinking about is the process of how designers think, which is that really kind of out of the box, no assumptions, basic fundamental questions always being asked kind of design. So when we talk about design, we actually sometimes get blank stares from people because they think that we're coming in at the very early stages of the project saying, you have to design this thing really well, thinking that, okay, here's a guy in a black shirt, untucked, funky glasses. What he really is talking about is, it's got to be a cool color and maybe something shiny and bubbly and a nice typeface. I really don't care if it's shiny and bubbly. What I really care about is, does it solve the problem that the person's really wanting to achieve when they use the software? So we want to really make sure they understand what we mean by design. The same is true for innovation. Nobody really knows what innovation means anymore. Some people think, it's an invention. Some people think it's just a rebranding of an old idea. There's a whole bunch of different ways of dealing with innovation. And we're trying to, come up with a common terminology for what these things mean. What we really are trying to deal with is, though, Charles Eames had a great quote, which somebody asked him, what are the boundaries of design? And his answer was, what are the boundaries of problems? And that's really the approach that we're taking here, is what's the boundary of the problem we're trying to solve at SAP? The problems are everything from what's the new technology we should be exploring for the next 5 years, to how do we sell the products, how do we support the products, how do we compete in a market share with small little companies coming up and creating these Web 2.0 enabled solutions that are kind of appealing and a little sexy, but they're not really fully integrated, but they capture the market attention. And how do we deal with all of those types of problems? And we really wanted to come up with design solutions for all of those things. The other thing that we really want to focus on is to really kind of scale design. We want everyone to learn how to do it, and we want them to have the self-confidence to do it. Now, the big challenge is that, as a designer, I actually am formally trained as a designer. So when I walk into a room, I normally take over the whiteboard, right? I mark up the whole whiteboard. I fill it up with everyone's ideas. I'm the guy who writes everything on the wall. I control the meeting that way, right? It's a nice technique. You're all free to steal that technique. The problem is I want the developers that I work with, who are usually pretty introverted, and as Hasso pointed out, they typically have a relationship with a couple of their colleagues, but they're not really comfortable with everyone. And I want them to have the self-confidence to walk up to that whiteboard and start designing these solutions and to really be able to articulate these ideas. But before they do that, I also want them to have the self-confidence to go out and talk to their customers so they can actually find out what their customers do, what their customers really need. This has been the biggest challenge. In the workshops that we do, we actually get them to go talk to users. So the first thing they do in this workshop is we put them on a bus, we send them outside, they go talk to some users. I actually had a developer in Germany who was on this thing. We were having them redesign a ticket machine in this little town in Germany. He hid in the men's room for 45 minutes at the train station because he would not talk to anyone. He stayed in there I pounded on the door. I got his colleague to come over, pound on the door. The guy would not leave the room. I chastised him the whole way back to the workshop, and he realized at the end of the day what he really missed, because everyone else could tell these great stories about what people were trying to do buying these tickets, and he couldn't do that. And he felt really bad about it, and he apologized, but he was just so painfully shy. He couldn't bring himself to leave that men's room. So self-confidence is a real big challenge here. But at the same time, we also don't want the real, the quote-unquote real designers, whoever those might be, to kind of feel that this isn't the real thing, right, from a design perspective. We want it to really be a successful design solution as well, not just kind of walking through the steps. So language plays a big part of this because no one really knows what we mean when we walk in the door by what is design. The other big thing that we deal with is taking design seriously. So how many people in the room are actually would say that they're a professionally trained designer from a design school? Show of hands? Okay. So how many people of that group have felt like they're kind of second-class citizens at some point in their career when they walk into a business meeting? This is pretty good. You guys are better than I am. So a lot of times, designers do feel like they're kind of second-class citizens because a lot of companies bring the problems to the designer after the project's pretty far along. So they only get to work on the project after the market's been decided, after the technology's been decided, after kind of the business plan and the business model's been decided, and they're asked to kind of make it look pretty or fix all of these problems or whatever it is that their design team is chartered to do in their company, but they're not really included at the beginning of the process. What we're trying to do by educating everyone in the company about the value of design is to make sure design happens at the beginning of the project, not to fix the shortcomings of a solution later on in the process. We also are challenged from taking design seriously because the real value designers bring is they're not necessarily an expert in a domain. They're an expert in a process. And so our colleagues, especially my experience in Waldorf has been, SAP has managed to hire the world's experts in these business processes. We have some of the world's leading experts in financial accounting and supply chain management and all these different business areas. And so when we walk into the room and ask a fundamental question about, well, why would a company care about managing their supply chain? Which is kind of the opening of a conversation for us. They look at us like, why are you here? You're in the wrong company. And so when we want to challenge these assumptions, people are challenging our credibility as a colleague in these organizations. And there are many cultural issues from a global perspective that this really changes the dynamics as well, working in the German culture, the Chinese culture, the Indian culture, the Silicon Valley culture. All of these different groups approach this very differently. So the credibility of the designer becomes a big challenge. The other thing that's also kind of a challenge is this just actually happened recently. One of my colleagues was going to a meeting with the CFO of a SAP customer because one of the things we do is we do outside consulting projects for SAP to bring that knowledge back to the organization. Our account team was very nervous because they were convinced that as a designer, she would show up in blue jeans and like, a midriff belly shirt and, all sorts of stuff because she's a designer and she's creative. And I had a long conversation with this guy about this stuff, and I said, well, what makes you feel a designer would do that? And he's like, well, you guys are really creative and blah, 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 blah. And I articulated to him that it doesn't really matter so much what the person wears. And he's like, oh, no, it's really, really important. You got to dress right. You have to have the right suit, and you have to have the right tie, and you have to have the right shirt. And, especially cufflinks, those are important. I'm like, that sounds like you're kind of, doing the whole aesthetic thing that you don't like designers doing. Like, you're doing visual design and packaging for yourself when you walk into this business meeting. And when the designers come to you and say, it's got to look good as well as work good, then I'm going to expect you to support that. And so, he's like, oh, yeah, okay, yeah, fine. I'm like, and by the way, she's not going to wear blue jeans. She's been consulting for 15 years. She knows how to do this. The meeting went very well, by the way. And she didn't wear blue jeans. The other thing that we want to do is, in addition to kind of instilling the self-confidence and the skills in these people, is the approach that we do to make that happen. And our little mantra is the listen to make and make to think. And so first we have these guys go out and listen to what the customers are saying. And then they have to make something. And so when we have conversations with people, we don't talk to them unless they make something. And it's not going to make a PowerPoint slide or make a Word document. We want them to articulate the idea in some kind of physical prototype. It could be a whiteboard drawing, it could be a physical model of something, it could be a working prototype system. It doesn't have to be fancy or cool or sexy, but it has to basically be the artifact that represents the idea. And the reason for that is that when we get into the make to think part and the conversations start flowing around the ideas, we found that it's much better to have a conversation about a thing than an idea. Because the conversation about the idea turns into me versus you in terms of that conversation. If we're talking about this thing, then it's me and that thing and you and that thing, and what do we think about that thing? And then it's a we conversation as opposed to a you conversation. And it really changes the dynamics, especially when you're dealing with a global organization and communication in general can be a challenge. So that's a big piece of this thing. The other thing that we've done is we've brought in our own local experts. So the DST actually isn't just a design team in terms of the traditional kind of model. We're more of a business consulting team in so many ways. In addition to designers, we also have people who are user researchers, and we have people who are technical architects. So being a software company, the technical skills are a big part of your credibility. So we have people on the team who are architects who can actually build these things and understand the deeper technical issues. But then we also have people who are solution managers or product managers in other companies. And these are the people who have the real strong domain knowledge about the products and the market and who our customers are, et cetera. So when we talk to people, we're really focusing on a lot of these different aspects. So we try to get design to be taken seriously by educating these guys. The other big thing is being multidisciplinary. So this is a challenge. It's a benefit, but it's a challenge. Everything we do is a collaboration. So when we take on projects, we really make sure that the project teams that we're working with put in half the resources, we put in half the resources. It's a real strong collaboration that way. And it's part of this is to the do to learn aspect of it, because we want to make sure that they're learning the stuff as we do it with them. So they acquire the skills so they can be self-sufficient after the project's over. And usually it takes about a project and a half for a team to be self-sufficient after this. It depends on the team. Some teams get it really fast. Some teams, as Hasso pointed out, some of these guys, getting the more conservative guys to really evolve is kind of a struggle, and we really have to push them very hard. But it does. Video is usually the most successful way of changing people's minds. But we really try to, get them to kind of understand these things. The big challenge, though, to be honest, is not always our team and the other team. A lot of times our challenge is designer to designer, or more specifically, school to school. So we hire designers from all over the world and different design schools, but one of the big challenges has been if you let the 2 or 3 designers who have been trained in their school kind of sit in a room by themselves, it usually gets into kind of a religious argument about orthodoxies and terminologies, and my professor wrote this paper and your professor didn't, and we call it this, and it's supposed to be called this. And this actually, one of the low points of the DST was a case where we had a couple of our new hires actually get into an argument in front of our client team about the use of a word. And this is the word that describes that part of the process after you do all the user research, but before you start building ideas, and you have to come up with a pattern from the user research. They almost came to blows, apparently. I wasn't in the room. They almost came to blows in front of the client team because they weren't agreeing on which word to use. And to be honest, one of the big challenges in terms of that we faced is how to get designers to basically lighten up on themselves so that they can talk to their clients, right? It's not about beating each other up on the right terminology. It's about doing the right thing for your client. In this case, our client is SAP. So how can we be the most effective we can be by getting these guys, the designers, to kind of agree on some of these things? The problem with that is that last piece, which is they kind of get design absorbed. And so our client team actually really lost credibility. We lost a lot of credibility with that team because they thought we didn't know what we were doing because we argued with each other. And so I think one of the big challenges that we've uncovered is that as a group of designers trying to get other people to design, we also have to get them to see us as really, having a plan and really knowing what we're talking about. And so we have to come across as professionals that way. The fourth area is our seat at the table. So I'm fortunate. In fact, I often think I'm the luckiest designer in the world because I get to work with Hasso for one thing, but my other boss is Henning Kagerman, who's the CEO. So I report directly to the CEO of SAP. Now, not very many design teams get to do that, and so a lot of eyes are on us in terms of, are we really having an impact? In addition to these two guys, a lot of other executives in the company really want to know, is this working? Does this really help us make better products? Does this increase our revenue? So as we go through the cultural transformation, we also have to actually execute, and we have to make things, and we have to be successful with things. So what we're trying to do with this is to, the tugboat references in there, because I kind of feel like the DST is a little tugboat, like trying to pull the rest of the big ship, along. And not everybody wants to do that. But we do have the executive support to really kind of make it a nice, well-informed, high-profile tugboat. But we really want to make sure that we enable success within the company. And so our team's biggest impact is oftentimes helping other teams have impact. And so we actually are not necessarily seen as the people who make the success. We make the success better. And this is actually something that we really like, is that we might not be credited with the prototype being accepted or built. We might not be credited with the big wow factor when we give demos. But as long as the team that we work with and the people that care about us the most understand the impact that we're having, we're happy. We don't have to be the team that's being recognized as the big team that's making all these successes. We really want to enable other successes. And culturally, that helps us achieve our goal because we come across as not having an agenda. Like, we don't have to be famous. We don't have to be the guys who are leading the pack. We don't need to have a huge organization. We're the people that help these other groups succeed. And so we're seen as being really nice guys, which is, I think, something I really want to make sure the team maintains that reputation. The neutral connector piece is another role that we play, which is being able to work across the organization. We oftentimes get to pull in pieces of different projects and create something better than any one of those things would have been by themselves. And so that's another kind of amplifying effect that we get to do. But the biggest thing is that we're trying to help with hiring in the company, we're trying to help with staffing in the company, and we're really trying to make sure everybody coming into the company has access to these design ideas. But we always are finding ourselves kind of defending our seat at the table, and from a design perspective, being able to stay in the boardroom and stay in those meetings and keeping design involved really is a question of credibility and accomplishment, and we always have to make those things successful. We love the ideas of fail early, fail forward kinds of stuff from a prototyping perspective, but when the product goes out the door, we want to make sure that it's a success. And so we really try not to ever miss the target. So And the last thing is change is scary. So we're trying to change an entire company. And it's a very scary proposition for some of these folks. They're very comfortable sitting in their offices, writing their code, building the products that they've built for the last 10 years. They really know what they're doing here. They don't necessarily like to bring in new ways of doing it. It's a destabilizing factor. So we really try to invest in people in terms of not just our team, but other teams. We really do the coaching piece, informally as well as formally. If somebody calls up and asks anyone on the team, myself included, how do I do this thing? Can you give me some advice on this stuff? We'll make time to meet with them and really walk them through this stuff. We really want everyone to be successful. The other thing is that we're trying to get everyone to switch from kind of PowerPoints to artifacts. So we really want people to make stuff. It doesn't have to be fancy, but we really want them to switch to a culture of artifacts so we can see the thing that they're talking about. Software is abstract enough as it is. It's hard for most people to understand, especially enterprise software where one person only sees one small piece of an overall business process. And so that one view that one user gets is only one part of a huge thing. And it's like the 6 blind men and an elephant problem, but it's a really, really big elephant. And so the other thing that we're really pushing is skills. And so Hasso's comments about the UI guidelines, those are incredibly important, but we also want to make sure that when people do break those rules, they break them intelligently. And so we want to give them the skills to know that if they are going to break the rule, they're going to do it well. They're not just going to do something random. We have a program of fellows in the company. So we bring people into the company, into our team for 6 months. These are some of the high potentials throughout the company. These are the top talent people throughout the company that can spend 6 months with us to be hands-on in the projects. And they go back and share those practices and approaches with their teams and organizations. And the other big thing is we're trying to switch from invention to innovation. So I think the guy's name is David Gerald. He wrote a book called Designing Innovation, or Innovation by Design. And he has this great thing in there about innovation equals invention times execution as a formula. And I really like this because it basically says you can't just come up with a really cool idea if you don't do anything with it. And it doesn't matter if you come up with a really great way to market something. If it's not a good idea, you're still not going to succeed. And so you have to do both. You have to come up with an invention and you have to bring it to market. And so that's what we're really trying to do is we're really trying to help the whole team, or the whole company, I should say, come up with that approach of really switching from just coming up with a clever idea to coming up with a real solid innovation. So I think those are kind of the 5 challenges. I'm trying to be respectful of the time because lunch is 2 minutes and 34 seconds away, according to that clock. So what's next? So the thing that's next for us is that we're going to continue to kind of lead by example. We would like to be able to collaborate with other teams and other companies that are doing this as well. We are working with SAP customers. We do consulting with SAP customers in addition to the kind of the training piece as well. And I think the big thing is that the successes that we've had, we're not going to sit on our laurels as a team. We're going to continue to push things forward. And we're really going to try to infuse SAP with this design thinking approach. So that's it. Thank you.